you with us.
Hi, Leanne. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, fantastic. So everybody, this is Ana Delgado. Ana is the Chief Customer Experience Officer at the Union Bank of the Philippines. That's quite a mouthful, Ana.
It's a fun job.
Oh, fantastic. So Ana was one of the leaders that we interviewed for the Human Workbook. That is this one here. And Ana tells the story of how the Union Bank of the Philippines is humanizing its workplace. And so, Ana, my first question for you today is, there are a number of leader stories in that book. And what we found as we were researching was that many leaders have different definitions of what they mean by humanizing their workplace. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what that means for the Union Bank of the Philippines.
Yeah, absolutely. So at Union Bank, I think humanizing the workplace first starts with grounding everyone's behaviors in a set of values and a strong purpose and vision. And it's important for us to do that because we believe that we exist not just to make a great bank, but rather to enhance the lives of the communities that we serve. And so with a purpose as aspirational as that, it's really important for us that everyone in the organization understands their role in making that vision and purpose happens, number one. Number two, that their own personal purposes are aligned in some way or form to some or all of that purpose, because we believe that people bring their best work when they have personal stake in it and personal connection to it. And so I think if we go further down into humanizing the workplace, in order to do that, we also want to create an environment where people can come in and bring their whole person. And what I mean by that is that they're not afraid to be human, to talk about what's going on outside of work, because it either enriches the conversation or maybe is standing in the way of something that they're trying to do. Oftentimes, for example, when I am in a coaching session with someone, or I encourage somebody to see a coach, I always tell them, you've got to be able to speak about and feel the pain, because we can't grow and we can't get past difficulty if we are unable to be vulnerable and sit with that pain and recognize what's holding us back. And so that's a very, I think, important part of how we humanize the workplace. And so when people are able to be vulnerable about themselves, they're also able to be vulnerable about things that they're encountering in the environment that they're in, and that helps us to improve working environments, and again, remove obstacles from that stop or make it more difficult for people to live out our purpose, our goals, and our mission.
Beautiful, Ana. It's so refreshing to hear this from a bank. Is this something that you're seeing, this move towards humanizing workplaces more in the sector, or do you feel like the Union Bank is a bit of a standout in this way?
All, I guess, with modesty, I would say, or I do think we are different.
Right.
And it has a lot to do with a couple of the leaders that we've had over the last decade, who themselves have made personal transitions in their own lives. And if I could maybe say that they're living out their own higher purpose in their life, and realize how powerful that was for them. And so they've shared that gift with the rest of the organization. And they've also found, I think, our vice chairman of the board, he was the chairman for a long time. He has a saying, he says, I believe we can do well by doing good.
Right.
And that speaks to, a greater purpose, a bigger connection, and that our ability to actually make a difference, have a competitive advantage when we are doing the right thing and connected to this greater vision that we have.
Yeah. It sounds idyllic, really, Ana. And so now it raises a question in my mind, which is, how does a bank manage to do both this hold the values and therefore the humanizing of the workplace, whilst at the same time being able to provide a return to the shareholders?
So we've connected. So we start off with that vision and the values, but we've also made a big effort to very clearly articulate the strategies that will get us there. And we fully recognize that unless the business is doing well, we are not going to be able to deliver on that that mission. So our strategies are very clear about how we want to go about doing that. And if you hear some of, I'll give one example of how we articulate our strategy. So one of our values is Ubuntu, which is an old African concept of I am because we are. So it's the sense of belonging to a community. And if we only exist because this community exists, and therefore if the community is not doing well, we're not going to do well. And so we extrapolate from this concept, and one of our strategies talks about how we need to be a strong player in an ecosystem. So what do we mean by that? Let's take it from a corporate banking standpoint. We believe that if we bring the community together in an ecosystem, so there's a corporation exists amidst an ecosystem of different players, suppliers, distributors. If we're able to unlock that community and bring them together through a banking solution, it's great for them and it's great for us. So that's one way we make a connection between our values and a way of doing business and a competitive advantage, because not every bank thinks about executing on a corporate strategy that way, as an example.
Sure, and I feel like I could talk to you about that for hours, but I'll get on and just ask you another question that I've been wondering about as I read your story in the book. The book it's found 5 leadership mindsets that seem to be across the leader stories in terms of their approaches to humanizing workplaces. And not all the organizations seem to take all of these mindsets on. Some of them kind of lean more heavily into one or another or a few. From the Union Bank's perspective, which one of these mindsets really seems to resonate the most in terms of how you approach humanizing work?
So I would say there are 2, Leanne, learning and growth, certainly, and belonging. So I think, let me start with belonging. So again, jumping off of our value of Ubuntu and
Yes.
the sense of I am because we are, and what I spoke about earlier, alongside, people being able to align their own purpose to our greater purpose, really speaks to the sense of belonging, right? And finding the right place in the organization. And in order to belong, you need to feel like you can be who you are as a whole. And I think, as an example there, in terms of how I personally also humanize this, I cringe when I hear people talk about, you got to leave your personal issues at the door. Work is work, and this is just about work. We have a saying in Tagalog, which is the local language in the Philippines, where people use this term trabaho lang to, which is that's just work, as an excuse to be able to say something difficult to somebody. But work is not just work. You are speaking to a human being who has feelings, who has a life outside of work that affects it. So work affects life outside, and life outside affects work. And if you don't recognize that, you're only speaking to half the human being at any given point in time, and you're not going to be effective in unlocking their true power and potential. So I think that's really important to me. The other and to the organization. So the other one is learning and growth, and this is particularly has really come to the front for us over the last 6 years, when we've been on an intense digital transformation journey. And we adopted this mindset of, if we're going to transform, because we have a burning platform, we have a lot of competition coming from the tech players, fintechs, into our industry. If we're going to transform, we need to be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so from an organizational standpoint, that means our ability to recognize when products and technology are becoming passé, the ability to pivot from there and adopt new technology, and new ways of doing things, and that also extends into business models, right? I think finance is one of those industries that's being disrupted heavily, and so learning, unlearning, relearning is really important to us. And I think as it applies also to leaders, we need to be able to learn in order to grow. I mean, whether that's learning a new technology, learning a new leadership concept, a way of coaching, or just growing into who you're meant to be and your full potential, right? Taking on greater responsibilities, and it requires learning and growth. So I think these two are the ones that, and sorry, just to relate learning and growth to our second value, which is Magis. Magis speaks about doing more, better, greater. That requires learning and growth.
Got it. Anna, one of the things that I loved hearing you talk about there was in learning and growth, there's the how do we learn to sustain the business, and how do we learn to grow into our full potential? Like, these are two different types of learning. And quite often when we talk about learning and growth, we tend to talk a lot about the one which is about, okay, how do we make sure that we're constantly evolving so that we can, from a business perspective, be successful. But this one about how are we growing as leaders into our full potential in order to be able to match the context within which we're working. I love you bringing that into the equation. And we certainly, as we were researching for the book, we heard lots of leaders talking about this idea of how important it was to really have this growth mindset in leadership, so that there was this real sense that, how can I bring a beginner's mind here? How can I be curious? What is it I'm not seeing yet? Where are my blind spots? This continual kind of developmental move, and how helpful that was.
No, absolutely. And I think one of the ways it's shown up for me consistently over time, as I've moved around a lot in the bank, has been, when I step into a new role, I will always start from the mindset that I don't know more than the people who are already there do. It takes a little bit of humility and vulnerability. That's I'm big on vulnerability as a key leadership trait, and I encourage my people to think about that and embrace it as well, right? So when I step into a new role, I always come in and I tell the team up front, I'm not here to tell you how things are done, and I will tell you today I know less about this business than you do, but that's not my job. My job here is to bring all of you to the table so that you're contributing ideas and to help you bring it together, right? So we can take this to another level. And that requires learning about the business, learning about the people. It opens you up to that learning mindset, I would say.
Yeah, beautiful. So Anna, I might just finish with a question around, on the ground, what is it that the Union Bank's doing that has one of the human beings who works at the Union Bank feel like they're having a more humanized experience? Could you just give us one or two practical examples so that we've got a sense of what this means on the ground?
So I think, one of the things we value a lot in the bank is hearing people's own stories. And we actually have a movement in the bank where we gather stories from people all over. So we have 200 branches. So we get everybody to write their own story about how they are living the values of the bank, what it means for them. So we have thousands of employees and thousands of stories that have allowed all of us to connect to each other and see how what does it mean to different people to live out the same values that we hold. And I think just the exercise of getting people to write down their story allows them to reflect on their own experiences. And them knowing that people are reading about this validates the importance of each and everybody's own story and how they're living it out. And I think that, this was done a number of years ago. At that time, he was the chairman of the board. Tito would go around and actually read a story. He would go to the branches and read one of the stories from one of the people there. And that validated that person validated the story, the experience, and told them how important it is to be values driven and values led in our organization. And I think that that helps people to realize that they can be who they authentically are, and have the ability to have the same values as everybody else, but translate it in a way that's meaningful to them and resonates with them.
Yeah, so beautiful. So beautiful. And yeah, I'm hearing the way in which the bank are connecting purpose and values and storytelling into making values real, because so often in organizations they're not, are they? They you see them on the wall, it's on the website, and it's on all the corporate paraphernalia, but it's not. It's very difficult for organizations to get values and purpose lived. And so
that's right.
It's very inspiring to hear that story, Ana.
Thank you, Leanne. I feel proud to tell it and honored to tell it.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, well, look, Ana, thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you back here on the Human Work Network conversation another day.
Thank you, Leanne. Looking forward to that.
Thanks, Ana.